former member of the Tupac Outlaws. In my short life, man, I experienced a lot of things out there. Flown on private jets, albums that sold over 40 million copies worldwide, shootouts, street fights, club fights, whatever you name it, been there, done that. Man, I experienced the ups and downs of this fast life. So I want to share with you my story, this Napoleon, life of an outlaw. I was 3 years old when my mother and father got murdered. After the murder of my parents, me and my brothers, we was in the house with the dead bodies for 24 hours. And I remember as a kid that I was biting my mother, trying to wake her up. I grew up in the house with my grandparents after the death of my mother and father. So whatever I would see out on the block, drug dealing or whatever, I would go in my room and I would write a song out of it. You know, it was a way for me to relieve whatever was inside of me. I was able to put it on paper. All I can remember all his life, he loved rapping. And I remember the first time I met Pop, man, he asked me to rhyme for him. I rhymed for him, we hit it off, and the rest is history.
He got close with Pop. He looked at Pop like a big brother or a father figure, you know, someone to look up to.
Utah was, him and Pop was bonded real tough.
I think Utah had become one of Tupac's extended family members.
Hey tonight. Before was a very fast life, man. Parties every night, private jets. We was living like kings.
There was a certain amount of arrogance they all had during that time because they were on cloud nine.
But I never expected to end that type of life. I never expected that life would come to an end so drastically and so soon.
There's gonna be some stuff you're gonna see that's gonna make it hard to smile in the future.
Yasmin called Gaddafi's mother and said Tupac just got shot. I couldn't believe it, you know what I mean? And you know, but the first thing that I said in my head, well, he got shot 5 times before. He's gonna take this, come out, do records, sell millions of records again. But when I actually saw him in a hospital bed, to me, I knew for right there that it didn't look like he was gonna make it.
You know, and Pac loved him, and them two was bonding, so I know it affected him real hard.
Once again, Tupac Shakur dead at the age of 25.
It was a time when I was in the music industry, and I had 3 houses at one time. Money was coming in, but I didn't have inner happiness, you know what I mean? I didn't have the happiness inside of me. So I knew that it had to be something else out there that could bring happiness besides money, jewelry, cars, and fame. Because once you get to a certain level, you start searching. And what I did is I turned to experiment different drugs, and I turned to drinking alcohol real heavy.
He was always liquored up. He was always liquored up and smoking weeds.
I seen him wild out with the girls, wild out drinking alcohol, getting drunk, fighting.
And I happened to one day be in a recording studio, and I was very intoxicated. And I got into a fight with my little brother, and it got to the point where I almost probably killed my little brother. I hurt him so much that he had to go to the hospital and get staples in his head. It happened to be a Muslim brother who was in the parking lot, and he broke the fight up. He calmed me down. He came and spoke to me.
I said, imagine tomorrow waking up sober and realizing that you killed your brother. How would you feel about that?
He was asking me to come to the masjid, and for a while I was ignoring him. And when I first went up there, I remember I went up there deep, about 20 or 30 boys with me. And I went there expecting that it was just going to be like how I rode everywhere else with a posse or crew, and we just going to hang out. But when I went there, that's when I seen something different that basically inclined me to want to know more about what these people was upon. That's what changed my life ever since then.
I go by the name of Amir Junaid Muhaddith, formerly known as Loon from Bad Boy Records. I've had a very extensive career in the music business. I was very successful in the music business. I contributed a talent that grossed in millions of records in sales. and I was able to reach a very vast audience all around the world. And to make a long story short, you know, being in the music business, you know, you encounter so many things that lend a hand to being like a consistent cycle of sin. Something that is very, very repetitive and very consistent, but the grand finale or the ending is really no benefit. And I started to find myself, you know, running into this understanding. And the time went by and I continued to practice this method of sinning in terms of doing music and indulging in the lifestyle that comes with the music. I found myself being very depressed and very discouraged because I felt like I've invested so much of my time and so much of my life and my energy into something that, you know, ultimately was, you know, going down an avenue that had a dead end sign. So being in the business where you're not really, you know, able to express this emotion because you're in a competitive environment and you don't want the competition to see that, you know, you're struggling. So I guess internally I was oppressed and I was trying to find a way to seek refuge in something greater than me, something greater than the business that I was in. And I actually did a record that was successful. I did a record with a Lebanese artist by the name of Masadi. He hails out of Canada. And to my surprise, because, you know, even as a successful artist, I never expected, you know, any music that I did would propel into a market such as the Islamic market or the Muslim world. Because we kind of, as entertainers in the West or in America, we kind of look at our success ranging in places like the United Kingdom, North America, South America, Europe, things of these nature. So for this record to be successful in the Muslim world, and me being able to be invited to perform this song in the Muslim world, happened to be the greatest experience and greatest transitional phase of my whole life. I visited countries like Muscat, Oman, Abu Dhabi, and Dubai. And through the course of my travels and through the course of performing, and, you know, once the shows were over, I started to pay more attention to the surroundings. I started to pay more attention to the environment that I was in and the culture that came with the environment. And as you know, in the Western world, we have a very one-dimensional perception of Islam, and we have a very one-dimensional perception of the Muslim. So on this journey, I was able to see firsthand the extreme difference, not only in Islam, but in the Muslim. Hands-on, my own experience with my own two eyes, I've seen something that was so, like, different from what American media, you know, expresses in terms of the Islam and the Muslim, and I was drawn. I gravitated to this understanding. I would hear certain things like the adhan, which is the call to prayer. I heard the call to prayer being recited, and, you know, actually seeing the Muslim make salat, meaning the prayer, and all these things, you know, combined, played an enormous, you know what I'm saying, gave an enormous impact to my heart. And for the first time in my life, I saw a people who were humble. I seen a people who practiced peace. I seen a people who collectively, you know, 24 hours a day, constantly engaging in acts of worship to the one true creator. And this was something that I needed, you know, because in my state of ignorance, I found myself trying to, you know, search other avenues to find this peace that I seen displayed on my journey. And I tried to do things like, you know, buy luxurious gifts or travel to beaches and do all kinds of things, and satisfaction was always temporary. So while I was in Abu Dhabi and looking at the sunset, overlooking the Arabian Sea, you know, something hit me. And that vision and those collective impressions left me in only one conclusion, that I wanted to be a Muslim. And this is where I was introduced to Islam with no verbal dawah, basically an impression that was left based on the mannerisms of the Muslim, the culture of the Muslim, and the collective acts of worship of the Muslim. All these things lended a hand to introducing me to a brand new way of life and a newfound peace that I wouldn't trade in for nothing in the world.